You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitry Vitsa. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors. And our regular listeners know that we are constantly pushing up against the edge cases, the hybrids, the intriguing stuff that's really what makes culture what it is. And you'll know that through the podcast, we've been digging into the connections between the music making side, the music recording side, along with the record distribution, the traditional music industry, the live industry, and so forth. So I'm super excited today for our guest. For one thing, I don't know that we've had a lot of guests on who run companies or apps that have as many users as our current guest. With over 35 million users, Bandlab is an incredible new way of making music that's been evolving for a while. And I'm really excited to have on the founder and CEO, Meng Kuok. Meng, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Dimitri. Tired, but surviving. We had a massive release that just came up, so we've been, slammed for it. But we're very happy to be here and going to catch up.
I can't wait to hear about the new release and to talk to you about it. But let's start at the beginning, because the funny thing is I went to NAMM a few years ago and saw this amazing Bandlab booth, and I was like, what is going on here? There was so many different aspects of what you guys do that was on display there, and it was front and center. It was a pretty significantly sized booth, and I had heard the name Bandlab, but I didn't really know what it was. So when you first meet someone and they ask, what is Bandlab, what do you tell them?
That's a great question. I think from the context of, having been to NAMM, we normally have a Bandlab Technologies booth, which is our group company. But, when it comes to the platform, which obviously is our flagship product of the group, apart from the guitars that we build or the media companies that we have, easiest ways to understand Bandlab and the way I normally explain it is sort of like Facebook for music, but with GarageBand and SoundCloud/Bandcamp built in, right? So it's a place that, ambitious, but, it's a place today that people can share their music as well as obviously make their music, which is the foundation of everything we do. So as you mentioned, I think we're actually over 37 million registered users today, and all from all walks of the world, and creating more than 11 million tracks, I think, in May or June alone on the platform from around the world, which is just a crazy, phenomenal amount of music. So very excited to be pushing a massive release, and that's kind of what the team has been super dedicated and focused on for the last couple of months.
What's so interesting about your description is obviously making that much music and so many people making music. We're going to get into that. But before we do, you mentioned this, it's like a Facebook for music. And then you talk about all the production side of it too. I mean, are you just saying it's like for sharing?
Well, I think sharing is when it comes to something like Facebook, I think the difference between the platform initially, Web 1.0, Web 2.0 was just about sharing. But I think as we've moved into the new world, it's about connections, and your connections live beyond the physical world, right? In the past, it used to be that you have physical relationships and then they're shared and built upon on the digital world. But today, the digital life of people is kind of where they live. And so, when we describe it sort of as Facebook for music, it's a place where people are engaging around music. It's a niche social network in that sense, although obviously people who love music and engage around music is very, very big. But it's not just about sharing. And the make is a key part of the whole thing. And the foundation really of Bandlab is also around the premise of, despite having great tools to make music making is not just about the tools, right? It's about the social feedback, the fan feedback, the interaction from your friends and family when you play them a song, finding other collaborators to work with, and being inspired by musicians or other creators of the same generation or the same stage in their development in the creative process as you are. So. I think it's a very long-winded way of saying, sharing is a component of what we do, but really connection is the key thing for us in the world of music making and music listening as well.
That's so interesting to think about music making in this digital framework versus the traditional way in which music was made. Obviously, there's a social network. There's connections in people getting together to jam and then write and compose and arrange and then record and then go on tour and all that kind of stuff. It's clearly social. There's clearly a network there, but it's physical is just so limited in terms of how many people you can interact with. And when you switch to digital, it's like the quantity of people, the number of collaborators, the distance between between collaborators, it just means like a crazy amount of ideas can be explored and put together. So it's really interesting that you start with that concept.
For sure. And I think the move of, as we talked about Web 2.0 or 3.0, whatever version we're at, right? We're at Bandlab 10.0 today. And I think, it all feels arbitrary at a certain point. But the reality of that transition from the old world and the user behavior, the versions really represent in our mind, and I think when it comes to digital to physical, the transitions in even human user behavior, right? And I think when you and I were growing up, or people of different generations, they've had very different experiences. So in the past, when you're learning an instrument or you want to make music, it's very much you pick up an instrument and you go to literally a garage and you start a band with people from your town, and it's a very different experience to the world today that's empowered by the internet and the world of digital, as well as smartphones and technology, and that massive upgrade that we've all had in user behavior. I think I heard somewhere that someone was talking about androids and humans being powered by technology, and the fact of the matter is that we are already powered by technology. The mobile phone in everyone's hand is everybody's first instrument. You don't go into a shop to buy a guitar or a piano as your first instrument. Very much for kids today who we all know grow up and use iPhones and iPads or Android devices, that's their very first instrument. And the instrument, the traditional instrument, in inverted commas, of a guitar is basically the upsell, right, in a digital world. And people don't get together in person in the same way they did in the past. You can have these virtual garages online, and that's what we've actually had to build for. The fact that music making was left behind, the world of music creation, and that entire sort of grassroots level of creating content was left behind when sort of the rest of the world migrated to Facebook and Instagram and more digital experiences, because of what you need to do to get together in person to make music, low latency, obviously, from a technical barrier, geographical barriers of finding people to collaborate with who get along with you and want to make music with you. These are some of the challenges that sort of Bandlab was built to solve, but fundamentally come from that transition of going from a physical world to a primarily digital one that we live in today.
Wow. Yeah, it's that is so intriguing to hear about. So let's get a little bit deeper into your actual community of users. How would you describe some of the typical users? Where are they in the world? Are there specific users you might be able to tell us about? Curious about different genres or music types or scenes that have popped up in Bandlab.
Yeah, so in terms of the users that we have in Bandlab, at a certain level of scale, when it comes to even musical instruments, which is an industry that we work in as well within Bandlab Technologies, our brands like Harmony and Heritage or Mono, which are legendary brands in the music space, in the musical instrument space. You have obviously a there are significantly more people who are prosumers or aspiring musicians or people getting into music than ever before. I think the accessibility of Bandlab has meant that we've been able to reach a very, very wide audience, especially today where everyone is engaging in music in a completely different way than ever before because of UGC video and short form video like TikTok and Instagram Reels. But our audience is one, because of the breadth of features that we have on Bandlab, you can do everything from start to finish. So, the ease of inspiration and the ability to kind of come up with ideas very, very quickly and build them out, or even capture and develop things out to a very, very high level. We've got a mix of basically everybody in music, from, very, very absolute beginners, all the way to seasoned professionals and experienced multi-platinum producers who are using Bandlab for the workflow tools, right? In Bandlab, one of our flagship features is our mix editor, which is a cross-platform DAW. By that I mean that you can actually access all your projects both ways, back and forth on mobile to desktop. The paradigm of Bandlab and the comparison is kind of like if you compare Google Docs to Microsoft Word, that's how you would compare, Bandlab to Ableton or GarageBand or the traditional plays in the space. So, fundamentally do many of the same things, but it's a completely different paradigm. And that's where the workflow really comes in for professionals and people who obviously, will always number be a smaller number than the people who are learning and the masses of people who are aspiring and releasing music casually or at an amateur level. But, all walks of life, all countries in the world. I think we've wherever there's an app store or a Play Store, and even in places like China, we're on the Huawei store and some different stores because of the ways that distribution of apps are set up there and platforms. But US is our biggest market, and because we're so early in the supply chain of music, in the way, if you think about the supply chain of music, of people making music, and then later it gets to distributors, later it gets to DSPs, we're so early at the ideation stage that I would say that a lot of the genres and the trends that we see on Bandlab reflect not just obviously what is out there today, because that's what's inspiring people, but it's also very interesting because it's also, hopefully the genres of the future of music and what's going to be very big in the future. So today, roughly 40 to 50% of the music on Bandlab is R&B and hip hop. And I think that's, partly driven by the fact that, the US is our biggest audience, and that is, the biggest genre today in the US, and globally obviously is driving pop and so much of the music that's out there. But in places like Philippines, where we're also very, very big, or Brazil, you definitely see different trends. Somewhere like the Philippines is more what we would call sort of traditional acoustic, pop, rock, sort of guitar, instrumental driven music. And so, we see different trends all around the world, but, it's very difficult to give one, representation in the same way that today, music has moved away from broadcasting at a certain level to narrowcasting on an individual territory by territory basis.
So if you're talking about R&B and hip hop, people are basically doing vocals with a lot of like electric beats, electronic beats, and samples and sounds and ambience and all that stuff that gets into a production. But when you're talking about the singer songwriters with the guitars, they're actually playing their own guitar parts and recording them into their mobile phones or their
absolutely
tablets.
Yeah, we have I think one of the beauties of the product that we have, we have everything from recording audio and complex FX and filters for music in that sense, as well as all the MIDI functions if you want to program a beat, a trap beat, or different sort of forms of electronic music or beats for rap, for example. And the fact that everybody has a very, very high quality microphone in their pocket, and everybody has a voice, that is one of the ways in which people are expressing themselves and able to create their different soundscapes. So yeah, in places like the US, we see a lot of people making beats and then collaborating with others, and people who are vocalists jumping on those beats either to sing or to rap on top of them. And then in other places where there's a great instrumental background, you're seeing people recording their guitars on Bandlab and playing drums using the MIDI instruments and then making their songs that way.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll get into some of the newest features with the release that you mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation, Bandlab 10.0. But before we go there, what are some of the coolest features of Bandlab even before that release?
Before Bandlab 10.0, some of the most popular features were one of the most popular features was a feature that we had called the looper, and I would say this is we joke internally that it's very much your grandma, your grandpa instrument, right? Something that anybody can just pick up. It's carefully curated packs. We've got loops and timed them in the right keys. There's a lot of extensibility with the effects that you can actually do with it, but it's very much sort of that mobile first music making experience where you tap a couple of buttons and then you have something and a vibe that you can then build out and then develop further. So, compared to different applications where that is the only thing that the application can do, that is one of the different ingredients that you can actually use on Bandlab. So you could use the looper to find a vibe which then inspires you to build things out as you build up your production capabilities or your skills. But in terms of one of the most popular features, that's obviously one of the most popular features. Another one is something that we developed in-house and proprietary to us, an effect called auto pitch, which is automatic pitch correction, which obviously helps people find that iconic, sound that's used a lot in R&B and hip hop, and that's something which is very, very popular amongst our US audience. So yeah, between auto pitch and the looper, as well as on the social side, we have a function called Creator Connect, which is, for lack of a better term, kind of a Tinder where you can swipe on different profiles and find people near you and look for the different instruments or people that they are inspired by as a way of discovery. So finding new musicians to collaborate with, that's a big part of the social side of Bandlab and something that people find very, very enjoyable to have their profiles there, but also as a way of meeting new people.
Awesome. Super cool. Well, we're going to dig in some more, but first I got to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to ask you a little bit about the past year. It's been a strange year for the whole world, and I'm curious what it's been like for Bandlab. We will be right back. Wow, I love talking to Meng about everything music tech. Okay, I want to give you the opposite of a spoiler alert. Let's call it an appetizer alert. You've got to stay tuned to the rest of this episode because we are announcing the 2021 Music Tectonics Startup Competition. And this time, we have some huge news about an investor who's planning to make an investment in our winner. And then, after you listen, head to musictectonics.com and find this episode on the podcast page. You'll see show notes full of links, including the link to apply to the competition. Now, let's get right back to the conversation and stay tuned to the end for our special announcement. All right, we are back. We have been digging into a lot of the interesting features on Bandlab, but let's switch a minute to sort of what's been going on this past year. Obviously, I thought we were at the end of a pandemic. I hope we're at the end of a pandemic, but I'm just curious, what are some interesting things that have come out of Bandlab during the past year?
Well, as you said, it's a very, very crazy time, and no one could have expected A, how long it would last, or B, what it would mean for the world and technology and industry. And I think one of the great things about being a technology company is that we were very, very used to working remotely from day one. We were always looking to find very efficient workflows. So the transition into a different work environment was nothing strange, which meant that even through this whole thing, we're able to develop and build our biggest release yet in probably the most efficient way. But I think as it relates to the community of people out there, for a platform like Bandlab, which if we think back and we start remembering how we transitioned to using Google Docs or Google Sheets as people in this world, which today is taken for granted, that's sort of the transition that people, when they start using Bandlab, have that realization of, I don't need to be sending files to myself or emailing things to myself if I have an idea on my phone and I want to work on it on my desktop and pull it out into Ableton. That work, or even the other way around, working on something on my desktop and I want to, make music on it or work on it on the go when I'm sitting on my couch, right? In the past, it was on the commute and people were really seeing the value of that. But it's strange that when people were not sort of on the go and needing mobile even more, and they were really sitting on their couch, that's actually when people realized and had the opportunity to try these new, workflows. And it's been massive for us, in terms of the number of people who've had the extra time in this time economy, where people are able to invest more time in themselves and their skills and pick up new things like making music. The flip side is for the people who are already making music, who are, which is obviously a massive audience already globally, for them to actually invest the time and be willing to pick up something new and are now empowered by it, even as we start to come out of the pandemic. The fact that they're empowered by this new technology in the same way that today, we use Zoom conferences or video calls so much more than we would ever have, done so in the past. It's game changing for what we think is the future of creativity, but also obviously, we have a sense of survivor's guilt that it was also game changing and really, rocket propulsion for us as a business and as a company, and our challenge is to keep up with it.
Yeah, definitely. So you have kept up with it. And you mentioned that, in this time period, you guys have also been able to build out the features as well. And let's dig into the latest release, this Bandlab 10.0. What are the key new features of the update?
So with 10.0, everything's been upgraded. From one of the biggest milestones for us, which was a redesign and a rebrand of our current logo. So everything has had a facelift in the application, and it's one of the most exciting things to me personally, as someone who's been building the business and driving the development of the product. For me to see sort of the usage and the credibility and the substance that is there with the product today, to finally have the facelift and the polish that it deserves. But from a feature set as well, we've had the biggest set of releases that we've ever done. One of the biggest things is a product and a new instrument in the mix editor called Sampler, which allows you to basically make music out of out of any sound, whether you hear it on the go. It could be your voice, it could be your dog, it could be a sound of the train, or the rain outside your window. You're able to make anything into an instrument, and that's a massive feature which again people have traditionally used in music making all the way back. But this was something that required a lot of hardware, and now this is all available in the palm of your hands on your phone. And every sampler kit that you make, so let's say you made a kit, imagine 9 pads of different sounds from walking around LA. Rain, obviously it doesn't rain very much in LA, but let's say a drain
ocean
pipe,
waves
ocean waves, a drain pipe, pouring water out, cars and different sounds. You could then sort of bring those sounds into your beats, work on them on your desktop device when you get home through your browser, and really turn that into your own unique sound that's really just you. So the sampler is a massive thing, which, when we describe the looper as sort of the instrument that anyone can get into and find really fun, that's the same thing with the sampler, except that, beyond just anybody, the professionals or producers who really need to capture inspiration, the ones who really, are creating ways to differentiate themselves with, sounds that are uniquely themselves. This is a huge feature for them. It integrates with Bandlab Sounds, which is our royalty-free loop sample one-shot library. We've got a huge amount of artist packs and curated sound packs from, game sounds, Nintendo game sounds to, trap vibes and those kinds of things. You can pull those all in and add them to your packs. So this was really, really big for us. Another thing that we massively upgraded was Bandlab Mastering, which I think not a lot of people actually necessarily know that Bandlab has mastering as a core function. We actually released this for the very first time back in 2016, automated algorithmic online mastering. And today, I think more than 5 million tracks are being mastered annually on Bandlab, right? It's a crazy amount of usage of that feature. And with the upgrade, we actually worked with some amazing Grammy Award-winning and multi-platinum producers and engineers to try and get our presets upgraded to really be at the standard and take it to the next level. Where they were already pretty good, we wanted to make sure it was at that pro award-winning standard. So that was a huge update that we did there, as well as massive performance things, which mean a lot to the team as well as the user experience. Where we're twice as fast as we were in the past, and compared to any competitive service out there in terms of online mastering, we're 10 times as fast. So we've been doing some really, really great tech work on the team, as well as developing that user experience to be both fast but also very, very good. And then it's also free. So we joke about the triangle of healthcare, where you want it quick, or high quality as well as affordable. I think with Bandlab Mastering and the new update, what we're calling the remastering of Bandlab Mastering, it's really hitting all the edges of that triangle, and we're so proud of this feature that we've just brought out.
Man, every time I talk to you, Meng, it pushes my thinking about everything in the music space and in music tech. I mean, before, when you were talking about mobile pre-pandemic, where it meant on the go, right? And then you were saying, but you flip it on its head and people are sitting around on their couch with nothing else to do, and all of a sudden mobile, in a sense, it's like micro mobile, right? You don't have to be stuck to your desk. You can be anywhere in your house as well. And then with the sampler within the 10.0 release, where you have mobile sampler, you're saying you're recording everything as you go. It's just removing all the friction, all the things that keep you from doing that kind of stuff. If you had hardware that you were using for sampling and for looping and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of a process. You actually have to go out and figure out, how am I going to record something out in the field, and then bring it back in and find the interface and integrate it in with the hardware. But you're literally saying, well, your phone is still doing all that stuff. And so it just transforms my thinking about mobile alone. You know what I mean? Like from couch to street. and when most of this music, maybe by these folks who were making music from home, literally were sitting at a desk before. They were chained to a desk in the same way an office worker's chained to a desk.
Exactly. And I think, when that's why they call them music production, or they call them engineers, because it's a lot of work, and you actually need a level of technical ability to even be able to do these things. And so that's one of the biggest things we've wanted to break down the barrier of, which is the reality that as we look at the next generation of music creators, they learn by osmosis. They learn via YouTube. They learn via everything around them or the things that they listen to. They aren't constrained by sort of cookie cutter routes to music production or different things like that. And everyone starts mobile, right? I think especially I've been very fortunate to grow up in the UK and spent a lot of time in the West, but also have experienced, much younger regions like Southeast Asia on a personal basis as to where I grew up or where I live in and where we build our business today now, and all the different cultures that are in the melting pot of a place like Singapore where we're headquartered. Understanding that, the transitions and the ways that people's user behavior evolves. As you mentioned, the pandemic has forced people away from being chained to their desk. But even that transition to mobile first in places like the US or the UK, that transition is happening very fast, but it's nowhere as quick as places, in the rest of the world where actually they never had desktops. They never had laptops or desktops in places like China. They never had email. They jumped straight from email to, they leapfrogged email to chat apps, right? Or places like Myanmar where they leapfrogged, landed internet and they went straight to SIM cards and 4G. So this is one of the things that we're excited by because we think that, the music creation space is so important to the general livelihood of people in terms of the output and the artists that it creates and incredible music that's out there. But music creation was very much left behind, and so everything that we do with Bandlab and this new paradigm and this ecosystem of the product suite that we have, sometimes people have compared it to sort of like a G Suite for music, whether it's sounds or mastering and our cross-platform mix editor to the workflow version history of everything you can do with your projects in Bandlab, plus all the social elements. It's the next generation workflow for music creation, which we're excited that in certain places it's leapfrogging because they've never had desktops or laptops or gone through that old workflow, and they're going straight to mobile. And today we're the only platform that brings those kinds of features to Android, as well as is compatible with iOS, where historically we've always had great products like GarageBand. So the future is exciting on that front. But when we think about the transition of user behavior, again, it's exactly what you're saying with the pandemic is pulling a lot of this forward, but I don't think it's something that bounces back in that sense. It's something where people realize, well, there's a better way of doing things, and that's what progress. That's how progress is made.
This brings us to a really interesting thing that I think about a lot, which is kind of the video and the photo making world has kind of preceded what's happening in music. I mean, we've seen so many apps for creating and sharing photos and videos get so popular. I'm curious if you could talk a little about why those got so popular and music didn't, and what it's going to take for music making apps to get there.
Yeah, I think, when we think about massive transitions in photo and video, we obviously think about, moving from physical cameras to digital cameras. And then, the more recent one of moving from, Instagram really revolutionized people's photo taking experience, coupled by the fact that cameras became, you stop by having a mobile phone today, you are a photographer, right? You have a camera, a very, very high quality camera on your phone that in the past you'd have to, buy something from Canon or Fujifilm or whatever, camera manufacturer you like the most. And so, that integration of social into the photography experience was something that really, transformed that industry. I think we're seeing that with what TikTok and Instagram Reels is doing with the video industry, especially as it relates to short form video. But I think one of the byproducts of video and TikTok as a product, which is, incredibly interesting, is what it has done to actually, start building that trend and that the revolution of the music industry as well, right? And I think when you think about the biggest tailwinds that are pushing something like Bandlab along, it's the fact that today, versus before, when it comes to social media, you didn't have to actually integrate music in any way to your social content. When it comes to UGC, if you were writing something on Twitter or you were posting something to Instagram as a photo or writing a post on Facebook, none of it was soundtracked. But with TikTok, which is the dominant UGC platform for the generation below myself, even everything needs to be soundtracked, and the fact that you're combining video and this ability to fork different ideas or to mimic people and create memes and have one basis, but everyone is familiar with what's going on in the zeitgeist. That is creating TikTok is the new radio station. it is driving the charts. And we can see the impact of TikTok, which is revolutionizing, video editing and putting that power into people's hands. It's also having the result of actually changing the music industry and making everybody need to be a musician or a creator of music in some way, because every bit of UGC content requires music.
Wow, that is so crazy to think about. And you know what? I want to ask you about this growth of music making, because in addition to see these creators that are making videos, and now you're saying, and all those videos need music as well, we should talk about this explosion of people who are making music for the first time. I want to take a quick break, and when we get back, I'm going to ask you about that. We'll be right back. Do you have your ticket to the Music Tectonics Conference? I'm planning this event for you, podcast listeners. The Music Tectonics team is organizing keynotes, panels, and networking with music tech innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, and deep thinkers, and I would love to see you there. But time's running out to get a special early bird rate at musictectonics.com. If you lock in your conference ticket before August 3rd, you'll pay just $69. That's a pretty great price to pay for 3 experiences: online, in the universe, and on a carousel by the sea. Mix and match to get a conference experience like no other. One ticket gets you access to online events October 25th through October 27th, and in-person events outdoors by the sea in Los Angeles on November 2nd. That's 3 mornings online with keynotes, interactive panels, and speed networking on Hopin's video conference but better platform, and 3 afternoons in the metaverse with keynotes, instrument demos, exhibitor booths, and chance meetings in Degi World, the avatar-based conference campus, no VR headset required. Then, one day in Los Angeles of in-person networking in real-world spaces way beyond the typical conference hotel. Bring that stack of business cards that's been gathering dust. You're going to need them. Don't wait any longer and get your early bird ticket now at musictectonics.com before the price goes up. All right, we are back talking with Meng Kuok with Bandlab, and I was going to ask you, how do you think the growth of music making is going to shift the recorded industry, the recorded music industry, the touring industry, and so forth? There's so much new stuff coming online because so many people have access to tools to make music, tools like Bandlab, and so we're seeing a lot of new music getting released, and sometimes it's not even released, it's just out there, floating out there. But how do you think that's going to impact the traditional music industry?
Well, I think there's no question that something like TikTok has already impacted the music industry. I mean, if you just go to the Spotify charts, everything is a TikTok song in some way, or you've heard the initial snippet on TikTok, and then you actually listen to the full song for the very first time on Spotify. So, that happens, everything is the other way around, and that, you've heard it first somewhere, which is the radio station, and then you go buy the CD or you get it, listened to by yourself. So, as we think about that transition and what it means, it's fascinating to think about how, all this is going to transform what we see today, especially when it comes to music making. And the result of that is, we've talked a bit in the past about, mass music, we're in the age of mass music consumption, especially as the DSP started coming into play and you saw the industry recovering. But actually, a phrase that we use a lot inside the company is that we're in the age of mass music creation, and we're entering that age right now. We see it every day, so we feel like we're in it. But I think for a lot of people, they're realizing, we are entering the age of mass music creation, empowered by Bandlab, and tools that bring music making to the palm of people's hands. And we haven't seen the effect yet. We've seen the effect of, great songs becoming massive on TikTok, that are now driving the charts. But that's still very much driven by what I would say the industry, which obviously serves a massive purpose to support artists and drive what goes around in the world. We're seeing, labels having their songs being released on TikTok and then becoming massive hits. You're seeing artists who have massive hits from before, even like sleeper hits that weren't big and now becoming very, very big on the charts again, whether it's Fleetwood Mac or whether it's Bjork or whether it's, other artists like that who are seeing revivals of stuff they've made in the past. And what's really cool about that is we're seeing the impact of the short form video sort of product and social experience driving music. What we haven't seen yet is the impact of mass music creation in the same way we've seen, that side of the coin. So, I would say that in 2 to 3 years or 4 years, probably significantly quicker, as people realize that, meme culture or sort of like the big hit songs, and they start looking for, originality in themselves and start making music on places like Bandlab to differentiate and create more unique content, because that's always going to happen. Those are the cycles that things go in. People always find ways to differentiate when everything becomes the same. You're going to see the rise of the music that's created in people's hands now start to drive the content and the charts of the future. So I think in some senses, it's a big question, but, my answer is very much a muddled one in trying to explain that, we haven't seen the effects of it yet, but I think we're going to see the effects of it very soon.
I mean, it seems like the effects are going to be that there'll be people who come out of nowhere with music that becomes very popular, and
exactly.
that the traditional labels or other kind of curators or A&R decision makers and so forth might not be able to jump on those fast enough because there's so many people that are making music.
Well, yeah, and I think, you summarize, that's why you're doing this job, right? You summarized it in 30 seconds, what I took 3 minutes to try and get around the point of, everything that you're seeing that's driving the charts today out of UGC are people, especially if you're in the industry, some may be unknowns to people outside, but generally, if you're in the industry, you've heard of many of the names before. You're familiar with them because of the label structure, or, they've had hits before in the past. But to your point, absolute unknowns, who will become, the next Lil Nas X's. And, he's an example of someone who was very much, not so well known and had a massive hit out of TikTok and that side of the world. And that's just going to become commonplace. And that's, going to be not just commonplace on a global perspective, but also on a regional and a local perspective as music is such a localized thing.
Well, I hate to go to a controversial place in the conversation, but there's so much conversation about the value of music, and I'm curious. In fact, people saying music's being devalued in the music space right now, and I'm curious if you have thoughts on how this tidal wave of music making that's about to hit. We don't know exactly when, or it's already hitting, but we haven't seen the full impact. How's that going to affect the value of music, and how do you think that should be addressed?
Well, sometimes this question is posed from the concept of is the music industry over, or how does the machine work, and when we look at it as Bandlab, we tend to zoom out a little bit because we try and think about not just the trends of today but the trends of the future, and the world of recorded music, which is what we talk a lot about in terms of the transition from physical to digital, or the industry in inverted commas. If we zoom out, there's only been a very short amount of time that we've been able to package and productize music and sell it, as a recorded format for a lot of money with all the rights associated with it, right? If you go back in time, back in the Middle Ages, there was no such thing as rights. The value of music was what someone was willing to pay you for. It was live music. Live music was the past, present, and the future. And if music wasn't copied and reshared or played by somebody else, it would disappear. Before notation, if someone didn't copy what you did and perform it for somebody else and say, and give attribution, that song would have just disappeared into the ether, and we would never have sort of amazing Gregorian chants or hymns or things from back in the day. So, I think what does that mean for the value of music? When it comes to DSPs and the assigned value of music, of going from a product and a physical product that had distribution costs to moving to something that now can be distributed digitally, the costs associated are not necessarily, or assigned in the past were not necessarily assigned on the value of the content itself. It was very much actually assigned on the production cost of actually making that possible to distribute. So, when it comes to the production cost of music, especially when powered by things like Bandlab, there's no question. The production costs will continue to get lower and lower and lower, and will trend to zero. Bandlab is free, so making a track on Bandlab at a quality level that the Beatles didn't have. Everyone jokes that a DAW or a laptop today in the palm of your hands with a mobile phone is more, it's higher technology than the Beatles had when they recorded their albums. It's now in the palm of people's hands, and it's completely free. So, that's already trending to zero in terms of production costs, and then distribution costs, or, the value assigned to how much you get paid per stream. That's more a function of the industry and subscription revenue out of the great DSPs out there will always trend to zero, because the amount of music will keep going up, and the subscription costs or the fees will never be able to keep up, and therefore, just by simple economics and supply and demand, that value will continue to go lower and lower and continue to trend to zero. So that's scary in some senses, but in some ways it's reverting back to the mean of artists understanding that music isn't the product and music is the service, and the artist is the product at the end of the day. They are the creative, they are the brilliance that actually makes something like music possible, and therefore, they are the ones who deserve to be paid and need to be able to monetize their talents and be rewarded as their fans and their audience are willing to support them and monetize for them. So, I think the value of music is in some ways an interesting question, but I think it goes back to how do we ensure that artists are fairly compensated, and how do we ensure that the value of the artist doesn't go away. And I think in a world of today where, empowered by the internet, artists can reach more fans than ever before, share with them absolutely everything that goes on with their day and differentiate themselves in their personality and in the things that they like and what inspires them. The value of the artist has the greatest potential it's ever been. They don't need people in the middle of the chain, and they can go straight direct to fan. And I think the value of the artist today is higher than ever before because of the internet. There are more ways to extend being an artist, beyond just music. And if you see, yourself as the product, that's an interesting place to be. There are obviously still challenges. The challenge today is in distribution, is differentiation. How do you stand up above the noise? But that's just the result of having more competition. So, I think it's a time in which music will, as a product, will continue to get devalued. But I think there are very, very intelligent, great companies out there who are looking at ways of empowering the value of the artist. And that's something, we are also thinking very, very serious about. And, a lot of the features that we've released in the past couple of months or, in the last years, as we've built up to the next phase and generation of Bandlab, which is supporting our artists as they mature, helping them earn a living, helping them make money from their music or support their careers and their engagements and connections with their fans. Supporting the value of the artist is something which, must be invested in, and it is the future. And in some ways, ironically, it was also the past.
Wow, man, once again, you've just flipped my brain upside down, Meng, and it's got me thinking about things in a way that I hadn't when I asked the question. And it's so interesting to think about that in terms of the value of the artist rather than the value of the music, and what does that mean for how an artist has a career. And in a way, you're saying they have this huge reach, or they have the potential for this huge reach, but how they monetize has a lot to do with how they choose to spend their time. Are they now going to monetize through live concerts, or possibly custom music, or maybe from VIP or fan one-to-one interactions and things like that? And it's interesting because the conversation, I think, in the industry has a lot been about kind of the history of how recorded music has been charged for, paid for, who gets paid out, and so forth. And what I hear you saying is, because of technology, it's inevitable that the prices of that, or the exchange of that, are going to continue to be challenged and get closer and closer to zero. But that doesn't mean that that's the only opportunity for even a recording artist to build a career. And it's super interesting to think that way. I want to thank you for, like, once again, making my brain just melt a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if we think, as you said, right, the recorded industry was very much focused on the product because that was driving the revenue, right, and that was driving, the money at the top of the game, and that's how everyone sort of quantified it. But if you think back to the crux of what labels did, they were financing and they were believing in artists. They were betting on their first album. They believed in the value of the artist, and what they paid or what they assigned was actually, again, a function of production costs a lot of the time, right? Because they needed to pay for recording studios and they needed to pay for these things. But when you started getting artists that were signed onto multi-year deals, or career artists, and they would bet on many different people, that was investing in the value of the artist much more so than the product. The product was just how they recouped the money they invested. And I think, again, as we think about what this means to the value of the artist in the future, back in the day, because of complexity in production as well as in distribution, only a fixed number of artists were able to get that kind of investment. As we think about startups and that kind of culture and technology that we live in, a fixed number of people, because of the label system, even though the labels were investing in artists and investing the value of the artists, what's really, really, fascinating and going to be extremely exciting, and already is for many, many artists out there, we just don't even know them, and they have massive fan bases and they've got careers by themselves, is that the fact that we're all able to engage on a one-to-many level or a one-to-one level, on a global perspective, any country, anywhere around the world, that sort of microfinancing of all these tiny businesses, every artist who sees themselves as aspiring to earn a living or build a career from just music alone is a small business, right? The microfinancing of where artists can invest directly in an artist and support them, whether it was through Kickstarter or whether it's through NFTs and new ways that people are finding ways to get that support from their fan base. It's distributed at a scale and able to empower so many more artists than ever before. And I think, again, to the point of like the value of the artist, the value of the revenue for the product will fundamentally change, and already is changing. And we're seeing some positives in the growth of streaming revenue. But the number of artists, the sheer quantity of artists, and the amount of artist to fan financing and support that in my opinion, completely outweighs what the past label system could do, is just validating and reiterating and building upon, this massive value of artist ecosystem that, we're going to be living in for the next couple of years, and hopefully, many years into the future.
Amazing. Well, this is so interesting. This has been an absolute blast. Before we wrap up, and speaking of financing, you have an investment arm called Caldecott Ventures, and Bandlab has come in as a supernova sponsor for the upcoming Music Tectonics conference this October and November. It would be fun just to touch base real quick. Where you guys are actually going to be in supporting the startup competition that we have at Music Tectonics. We launched last year for the first year, and so it'd be great to ask you, what are you looking to invest in?
Yeah. Well, this is something which obviously has been, relatively under the radar. You're, one of the first people who actually, know about this as a vehicle. We've generally been doing sort of more private investments on a personal basis, as well as on a group basis. One of our biggest company values at Bandlab Technologies is innovation, right? We sometimes don't even call ourselves a tech company anymore, because tech is just expected, and that sort of sense of utilizing technology to its full capacity is just expected in any business today. But innovation is something we truly believe in, and that's really what drives beyond music and the people that we help, the people within the company and myself personally. So supporting obviously what you guys are doing is priority number one, as well as the fact that when it comes to supporting future companies and the future Bandlabs of the world, that's something on a personal basis I'm very passionate about. We're traditionally operators, and I think that comes with a different level of experience and understanding of what things go on. And on a personal basis, the things that we look on in sort of my personal arm of Caldecott Ventures is things around MMT, music, media, and technology. Those are really the areas where I personally have operated businesses in, as well as always look at the space and excited by the possibilities out there that we will never get around or be able to sort of do ourselves, but things that really have a consumer angle, music angle, media angle, as well as obviously technology at the core of everything they do is a big part of the types of investments and the types of startups that we've been looking at in the space and placing our bets on.
Wow. So a lot of cool opportunities for our listeners. Those of you out there who have startups, you should definitely come to Music Tectonics, the conference, go to the website, sign up for the newsletter so we can send more information out as we roll out the application process for the Music Tectonics startup competition that Bandlab is supporting and presenting. Meng, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I feel like we could talk for another hour easily, but I think this is a good dive in, and people can find out more when they come to the conference, because you're going to be there.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure to chat, Dimitri, and we'll see you soon at the conference. And
congratulations on 10.0 Bandlab. If you guys haven't downloaded it, it is a blast. That the loop process is so easy to get into. I've done it. I've got people on my team who've done it. I've got a 12-year-old son who's done it. Everybody's just has a blast first time they use it, and can't wait to see what else happens with that. Meng, thanks again so much for joining me.
I have some exciting news for music tech startups. Applications are open for our second annual Music Tech Pitch Competition, part of the 2021 Music Tectonics Conference. We've teamed up with Bandlab to make this year's event even more awesome. So here it is. Bandlab presents Swimming with Narwhals, a music tech startup competition. Startups across any part of the music tech ecosystem are invited to apply, with a new additional emphasis on music creation and fan-facing companies. Apply at musictectonics.com by August 16th, 2021. To be eligible, your startup must have a valuation under $2 million US, and you must purchase a conference ticket. Luckily for you, tickets are available at an early bird rate of $69 through August 2nd, 2021. Our jury will select 10 semifinalists to pitch at Music Tectonics online pre-conference events. 4 finalists will then go on to pitch at the online conference, October 25th through 27th, 2021. Best of all, Bandlab's investment arm, Caldecott Ventures, has earmarked up to $50,000 to invest in one of our winners. We won't throw you in a ruthless shark tank. We invite you instead to swim with the narwhals, the unicorns of the sea. Learn more and apply at musictectonics.com.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We put out new episodes every week. Want more? Find it at musictectonics.com. You can dig deeper into this episode, learn about our annual conference, get the Music Tectonics app, and sign up for our newsletter. musictectonics.com has it all. Also, look for Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Clubhouse. And connect with me, Dmitry Vitsa, on LinkedIn. Peace.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.